You're sitting in your car in the parking garage after work. Engine off, phone in your lap, staring at nothing in particular. And you're doing that thing you do sometimes, where you're not quite ready to go home yet because you need a minute to just breathe. It's been one of those days. Not terrible, not great, just one of those middle-of-the-pack, slightly exhausting, vaguely unsatisfying days, where you showed up, you did the thing, and now you're sitting here in a concrete box that smells like exhaust fumes and stale fast food, wondering when exactly this was supposed to start feeling different. And then you check your bank account. Not because you need to, not because you're worried, just because it's become a reflex. Open the app, glance at the number, close the app. A tiny dopamine hit, or sometimes a tiny anxiety spike. Depends on the day. But today, the number is fine. It's more than fine, actually. You've got a solid balance, you're making good money, really good money. 6 figures. The kind of number that 10 years ago would have felt like winning the lottery. The kind of number your parents would have been thrilled to hear you were making. And yet, you're still sitting in this parking garage, trying to figure out why it doesn't feel like enough. Why you're still stressed about bills. Why that vacation you've been talking about for 2 years still feels like something you can't afford, even though technically you absolutely can. Why the apartment you live in is fine, but not great. Why you're still comparing your life to people on Instagram who somehow seem to have more space, more freedom, more life, even though you're pretty sure you're making more money than most of them. And the worst part? The part you don't say out loud? You feel guilty for even feeling this way. Because you know that you're lucky, that plenty of people would kill to make what you make, that complaining about 6 figures sounds ungrateful, or out of touch, or like one of those people who can't read the room. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. What if 6 figures, the mythical milestone, the benchmark of making it, what if it's not what it used to be? What if the goalpost moved and nobody told you? And what if by the time you got there, the entire game had changed? Stick with me, because what I'm about to break down is going to completely reframe the way you think about income, lifestyle, and what it actually takes to feel secure in 2026. Here's what most people still believe about 6-figure salaries. They mean you've made it, that you're comfortable, that you're part of the upper middle class, that you can afford a house, a decent car, maybe a vacation or 2 a year, and you're not living paycheck to paycheck. And for a long time, that was true. Back in the 1990s, making $100,000 a year put you in the top 10% of earners in the United States. It was a significant income. It meant you were doing well. You could buy a house in a good neighborhood. You could send your kids to college without going bankrupt. You could retire at a reasonable age with a reasonable nest egg. But here's the thing most people don't realize, and this is the part that's going to sting a little. In 2026, 6 figures doesn't mean what it used to, not even close. Adjusted for inflation, that $100,000 salary from 1995, it would need to be about $206,000 today to have the same purchasing power. Let that sink in for a second. The 6-figure milestone that we've been culturally obsessed with for decades has lost more than half its value. But the perception didn't change. The cultural narrative didn't update. We're still chasing a number that was defined in a completely different economic reality. So here's the thesis, and I need you to really sit with this. Making 6 figures in 2026 doesn't make you rich. In most major cities, it makes you middle class, and in some cities, it makes you struggling middle class. You might think hitting $100,000, $120,000, or even $150,000 means you've unlocked financial freedom. But the truth? You've just unlocked a new tier of the same game, one with higher costs, higher expectations, and the same underlying stress. The trap isn't that you're not making enough. The trap is that the system convinced you that this number was the finish line, when really, it's just another checkpoint. Let's break this down layer by layer with real numbers, because once you see the math, you can't unsee it. Layer 1, the cost of living explosion. Let's start with the big one, housing. In 1995, the median home price in the United States was about $113,000. If you were making $100,000 a year, you could reasonably afford that house. The rule of thumb back then was that you should spend no more than 2.5 to 3 times your annual income on a home. So a $100K earner buying a $113K house, totally doable. Fast forward to 2026. The median home price in the US is now over $420,000, and that's just the median. In cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, Austin, or Boston, the median home price is closer to $600,000 to $900,000. In some neighborhoods, it's over $1 million. So if you're making $150,000 a year and you want to follow that same 2.5x to 3x rule, you should be looking at homes in the $375,000 to $450,000 range. But good luck finding one in a desirable area with good schools and a reasonable commute. You're competing with dual-income households making $250K plus, cash buyers and investors. And let's not even talk about rent. In major cities, a decent one-bedroom apartment can easily run you $2,500 to $3,500 per month. That's $30,000 to $42,000 per year, just for rent, before utilities, before internet, before anything else. If you're making $150,000, your take-home pay after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare is probably around $105,000 to $110,000, depending on your state. Let's call it $108,000 for easy math. So if you're spending $36,000 a year on rent, which is pretty standard for a decent place in a mid to high cost of living city, that's 33% of your take-home pay, just on housing. And that's before you've bought groceries, before you've made a car payment, before you've contributed to your 401k, before you've paid off student loans, before you've done literally anything else. You might be thinking, okay, but I can just live somewhere cheaper. And sure, that's an option, but here's the catch. The jobs that pay 6 figures are concentrated in high cost of living areas. Tech jobs in San Francisco, finance jobs in New York, consulting jobs in DC, healthcare jobs in Boston. If you want to make that kind of money, you often have to live in the places where that money doesn't go as far. Layer 2, the lifestyle creep tax. Now let's talk about the invisible force that quietly drains 6-figure earners faster than almost anything else, lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep is what happens when your expenses rise in lockstep with your income. You get a raise, you upgrade your apartment, you lease a nicer car, you start ordering delivery more often because you can afford it now. You buy the name brand stuff instead of the generic. You subscribe to services you don't really use because the monthly fee feels small. And none of these decisions feel wrong. They all feel reasonable, justified even. You're working hard. You deserve this, right? Here's the problem. Lifestyle creep is exponential, not linear. Let's say you were living on $60,000 and you were doing fine. Not great, but fine. Then you get a promotion. Now you're making $120,000. Awesome. You've doubled your income. But instead of saving or investing that extra $60,000, you start spending it. You move from a $1,500 per month apartment to a $2,500 per month apartment. That's an extra $12,000 a year. You trade in your reliable used car for a lease on a new SUV. That's another $6,000 to $8,000 a year. You start eating out 3 times a week instead of once. That's another $4,000 to $6,000 a year. You book a nicer vacation. You upgrade your wardrobe. You get a gym membership you actually use for 3 months. Before you know it, you're spending $100,000 to $110,000 a year. And your savings rate? It's basically the same as it was when you were making $60,000. You doubled your income, but you didn't double your wealth. You just doubled your burn rate. And here's the psychological trick that makes this so insidious. It doesn't feel like you're overspending because you're not buying yachts, you're not buying Lamborghinis, you're just living. You're making the same kinds of decisions that everyone around you is making. You're keeping up. But keeping up is the trap. Layer 3, the tax blind spot. Let's talk about taxes, because this is where 6-figure earners get absolutely hammered, and most people don't realize how much it's costing them.
When you're making $50,000 a year, your effective federal tax rate might be around 12 to 15%. But when you cross into six figures, you jump into higher tax brackets fast. Let's say you're single, making $150,000 a year. Here's what you're actually paying. Federal income tax, about $32,000 to $33,000, depending on deductions. Social Security and Medicare, FICA, about $11,000. State income tax, if you're in California, add another $9,000 to $10,000. If you're in New York, similar. Even in lower tax states, you're looking at $3,000 to $5,000. So your total tax bill is somewhere between $46,000 and $54,000. That's roughly 30 to 36% of your gross income gone before you even see it. Your $150,000 salary, it's really more like $96,000 to $104,000 in actual take-home pay. And here's the kicker. You're in this weird middle zone where you make too much to qualify for most tax credits or subsidies, but you don't make enough to access the kinds of tax strategies that the truly wealthy use, like capital gains treatment, carried interest loopholes, or setting up LLCs and S-corps to shield income. You're in the highest taxed income bracket relative to your wealth building capacity. You're not rich enough to optimize your way out, but you're too comfortable for the system to give you a break. Layer 4, the debt anchor. Now let's add in debt, because if you're making six figures in 2026, there's a pretty good chance you've got some. Student loans. The average borrower with a graduate degree, which, let's be honest, a lot of six-figure earners have, is carrying about $60,000 to $80,000 in student loan debt. At a 6% interest rate, that's about $650 to $850 per month in payments. Over 10 years, that's $78,000 to $102,000 in total payments. Car loans. If you financed a $40,000 car over 5 years at 6% interest, you're paying about $775 per month. That's another $9,300 a year. Credit card debt? The average American household with credit card debt carries about $7,000 in balances. If you're paying 20% interest and only making minimum payments, that debt is compounding faster than you can kill it. So, let's add it up. You're making $150,000. After taxes, you're taking home about $105,000. Subtract $36,000 for rent, $8,000 for student loans, $9,000 for a car payment, and you're down to $52,000. And you haven't bought groceries yet, you haven't paid for insurance, you haven't contributed to retirement, you haven't lived. Suddenly, six figures doesn't feel like much at all.
So why do we keep chasing this number? Why does hitting six figures still feel like the ultimate goal, even when the math clearly shows it's not enough? Because of something psychologists call anchoring bias. We anchor our sense of success to a number that was established decades ago, and we never adjusted the anchor. $100,000 became the cultural shorthand for successful. It's a clean, round number. It sounds impressive. It's been referenced in movies, TV shows, salary negotiations, and dinner table conversations for generations. So even though the purchasing power of that number has been cut in half, the emotional weight of it hasn't changed. There's also comparison culture. You're not just comparing yourself to your past self, you're comparing yourself to everyone around you. And if your peers are making six figures, if your Instagram feed is full of people who seem to have it all, you feel like you need to get there too. Not because it's actually going to solve your problems, but because it looks like it should. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The goalpost isn't just moving, it's accelerating. And chasing it without understanding the math is like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. All right, so what do you actually do with this? Because the answer isn't give up or move to the woods and live off the grid. The answer is to stop playing the game by the old rules. Here's the framework. Step 1. Redefine enough. Stop anchoring to six figures as the goal. Instead, reverse engineer your actual life. What do you need to feel secure? Not what Instagram says, not what your parents' generation said, you. Write down your real expenses. Add 20% for buffer, add another chunk for savings and investing. That's your number. And if six figures doesn't get you there in your city, you've got three options. Earn more,
move, or cut costs. All three are valid. Step 2. Cap your lifestyle at 75% of your take-home pay. If you're making $150K and taking home $105K, live like you're taking home $78K. Bank the rest. Invest it. Build wealth. Because wealth isn't what you earn, it's what you keep. Step 3. Get ruthless about taxes. Max out your 401K, max out your HSA if you have one, look into backdoor Roth conversions. If you have a side hustle, consider forming an LLC or S-Corp to optimize deductions. Hire a CPA if you're serious about this, because every dollar you shield from taxes is a dollar you can actually use. Step 4. Kill the debt anchor. Make a plan. Prioritize high-interest debt first. If you've got student loans at 6% and credit cards at 20%, attack the credit cards like your life depends on it, because financially, it kinda does. Step 5. Build assets, not appearances. Stop spending money to look successful. Start spending money to become financially independent. Buy index funds. Invest in real estate if it makes sense. Build a side income stream. Because 6 figures might not be enough on its own, but 6 figures, plus smart investing, plus asset accumulation, that's a different game entirely. If this video just flipped your understanding of what 6 figures actually means in 2026, if you're sitting there thinking, wait, I thought I was doing well, good, that's the wake-up call. The system isn't going to tell you this, your employer isn't going to tell you this, but now you know. Share this with someone who's still chasing the 6-figure dream without realizing the game has changed. Drop a comment and tell me, are you making 6 figures and still feeling broke? Because I want to hear your story. And if you want more videos like this, real talk, real math, no BS, hit subscribe. Let's keep pulling back the curtain.